Before viewing this video, watching part 1 is highly recommended. Enjoy. Baraatheon climbs up the pole where he feels safe. Could the skink be hungry? We see the curled tail once more, and out pops the dewlap. The orange-throated skink allows the smaller, frightened anole time to move aside. Very polite of him. 'Twas the basking spot the skink was after, not the brown anole. Another brilliant dewlap display as he keeps eyes locked on the larger skink. We know that the skink is docile, but our small brown anole does not. In his world, the skink is a predator who could possibly prey on him. Baraatheon, the dominant green anole, repositions himself. He keeps his distance but is unbothered by the skink basking in his territory. The leaf has begun to slowly dry due to the warmth of the heat bulb, creating a perfect basking spot for the skink. We find it interesting that the brown anole keeps its distance but doesn't completely flee away from the skink. But he does flee from Chop, the dominant brown anole, who's much smaller than the skink. He's more afraid of rival brown anoles even if they are smaller than skinks. Now that the skink's gone and Chop is nowhere in sight, the submissive anole gets a chance to soak up warmth in the best spot this section has to offer. He doesn't notice yet, but the skink hasn't completely left the area. The skink would now prefer to relax at its spot in the plant. Our second male skink, below on the rocks, has been surprisingly dormant. The submissive brown anole spots the skink in the plant. It's much too warm for the brown anole to leave. So he inflates himself in order to look larger and stays put. His body language would not be so confident and proud had Chop been around. Baraatheon edges his way down the pole. This desirable basking spot is traded amongst the lizards multiple times throughout the day. We'll call the submissive anole Dex from here forward. It seems Dex is slowly becoming bolder and bolder. Baraatheon is no threat to Dex. With the skink out of sight in the plants, and Chop atop his tree, Dex can finally relax. Baraatheon has warmed up enough. He's now ready to move forward with his day. Anoles living in our garden and anoles living in cages behave a lot different. A cage usually causes some natural behaviors to become dormant in reptiles. In the world of a caged lizard, there are no territories to be won or lost. Therefore, territorial behaviors like head bobs and dewlap displays aren't seen as much in cages. He takes a good look before jumping down, as Dex lies tucked away warm beneath the leaf. Another dewlap display in case any males are in sight. A smart lizard destined to live long is always cautious before moving, because it is movement that attracts the attention of predators. There is indeed a species of lizard thriving in our garden that preys on anoles. Every anole living in our garden were originally sold as feeder anoles. This means they were specifically sold to be fed off to other animals. Dropped in a cage with a larger species, nowhere to run or hide. Here in the garden they have plenty of space to run and hide. Even to live out a life for months on end without any contact with a predator. Dex spots movement from a large skink below. It causes him to inflate himself. The active skink is now warm and ready to reposition. Dex is unaware where the skink has gone. Watch as he begins to behave nervously. He does not want to leave the warm spot. But he also does not want to be preyed upon. You and I are aware that the skinks are docile. Dex is not. Nervous indeed. But he'll choose to stand his ground. He'll want to make sure he keeps an eye on the nearby skinks. Notice the proud, confident stance he holds. If Chop, the dominant brown anole, was around, he'd consider Dex's body language as disrespect, even if it is directed at the skinks. They are now face to face. Dex is by far one of the most courageous anoles in the garden. Chop would never. Watch as Dex slowly but surely begins to trust the skink. Movement, yet the skink does not react. It has become obvious he is not a threat. Dex turns his back to the skink. Body language signaling he isn't as nervous. But he'll still keep an eye on the larger lizard. Majority of the time the skinks are docile, especially toward the anoles. But there are times when even the skinks get a little territorial with one another. You'll get a chance to see what that looks like. He spots the other male skink as it makes its way up the plant. After taking a good look at this skink's body language, do you think he'll be dominant or submissive? If your answer was submissive, you were correct. The incoming male did not have to do much to get the submissive skink to move. That tells us they've already established their hierarchy. One more quick head bob sends the submissive skink away. Dex had been getting comfortable with the previous skink's presence. He'll have to start all over with the new skink. That'll do for this spot. The active skink is on the move again. Both skinks have made their way down. It is interesting that they were territorial atop the plant. But watch their behavior now that they are on the rocks. They seem to be more tolerant of each other. There's something about being in the plant that causes them to become more territorial. They've warmed their bodies enough. After eating all the insects living in the rocks, they'll have to explore the garden to find food. Dex has had enough warmth as well. It's time for a hunt. Thank you for watching. Leave a like if you enjoy documentaries about lizards. Consider subscribing for more interesting reptile and nature documentaries.